Hello everyone. Welcome to this long English listening practice for beginners. Today's story is called The Long Road to Happiness. This story is slow, easy to understand, emotional, and very long so you can practice listening for a long time. Please relax, listen carefully, and enjoy the story. Let's begin. My name is Lucas. I am 18 years old, and I live in a small town near the sea. My town is peaceful. In the morning, people ride bicycles to work. Fishermen prepare their boats before sunrise. Small children walk to school together while laughing and talking. Life here is simple, but sometimes, even simple lives can carry heavy worries. I live with my mother, father, grandmother, and younger sister Emma. My father works at a fishing port. Every day he wakes up before 4 in the morning. His hands are rough from years of hard work. My mother works in a bakery near the market. She bakes bread, cakes, and cookies every day. My younger sister Emma is 12 years old. She is cheerful and loves singing loudly around the house. And my grandmother. She is the kindest person I know. Every evening, she sits outside the house drinking tea and watching the sunset. When I was younger, she often told me stories about life. One night, when I was around 10 years old, she asked me something important. Lucas, she said softly, what kind of person do you want to become someday? At that age, I did not know how to answer. So I simply said, I want to become rich. My grandmother laughed gently. Money is useful, she said, but happiness is more important. At that time, I did not understand her words, but years later, I finally did. When I entered high school, everything started changing. School became more difficult. Students competed for high grades. Teachers gave us more homework every week. Everyone constantly talked about exams, universities, and the future. Some students were very confident, but I was not, especially when it came to English. I loved the sound of English, but I was afraid of speaking it. Whenever I spoke English in class, I became nervous. My pronunciation sounded strange. My grammar was terrible. And worst of all, I was afraid people would laugh at me. One afternoon during English class, our teacher suddenly called my name, Lucas. Please stand up and read the next paragraph immediately. My heart started beating fast. I slowly stood up and began reading, but after only 2 sentences, I mispronounced several words. A few students started laughing quietly. My face became hot with embarrassment. I wanted the floor to open and swallow me. After class, I packed my bag quickly and tried to leave, but then my English teacher stopped me. Lucas, she said kindly, please wait. I turned around nervously. Yes, teacher. She smiled softly. You should not be ashamed of making mistakes. I looked down at the floor, but everyone laughed. She nodded slowly. Yes, some people laugh because they are immature, but mistakes are part of learning. Then she said something I never forgot. Students who improve the most are usually the ones brave enough to make mistakes. That sentence stayed inside my heart for years. At home, life was becoming more difficult. One evening during dinner, my father looked unusually serious. He put down his chopsticks and sighed deeply. The fishing company is reducing workers, he said quietly. My mother looked worried immediately. What does that mean? There may not be enough work next month. The room became silent. Even my little sister stopped talking. I looked at my father's tired face and suddenly realized something painful. Adults also feel afraid. Growing up, I always thought parents were strong and fearless. But that night, I saw fear in my father's eyes for the first time. After dinner, I could not sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours thinking about our future. What would happen if my father lost his job? How would we pay bills? Would my sister still be able to go to school? For the first time in my life, I truly wanted to help my family, but I did not know how. A few weeks later, while walking home from school, I passed a small cafe near the beach. A sign outside said, part-time worker needed. I stood there for several seconds staring at the sign. Then I took a deep breath and entered. Inside the cafe, soft music was playing. The smell of coffee filled the air. A woman around 40 years old stood behind the counter. "Can I help you?" she asked. I swallowed nervously. I want to apply for the job. She smiled kindly. "What's your name?" "Lucas." "Well, Lucas, do you have experience?" I shook my head. "Not really." She laughed softly. "That's okay. Everyone starts somewhere." Her name was Mrs. Taylor, and that small cafe would completely change my life. I started working every evening after school. At first, I was terrible at everything. I dropped cups. I forgot orders. I cleaned tables too slowly. One time, I accidentally spilled orange juice on a customer's bag. I apologized almost 20 times. The customer looked annoyed, but Mrs. Taylor calmly helped me clean everything. After the customer left, I felt terrible. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. Mrs. Taylor smiled. "You're learning. Don't be too hard on yourself." Slowly, I improved. I learned how to prepare drinks, greet customers, and work faster. The cafe became one of my favorite places. Many different people visited every day. Students, tourists, old couples, office workers, musicians, sometimes foreign travelers visited to. At first, I was terrified to speak English with them, but Mrs. Taylor encouraged me. "You're studying English, right?" "Yes." "Then practice here. What if I make mistakes?" She smiled. "Then make mistakes." One rainy evening, a foreign customer entered the cafe. He looked around before speaking slowly. "Excuse me, do you have hot chocolate?" Mrs. Taylor looked at me and whispered, "Your turn." I panicked inside, but I forced myself to answer, "Yes, we do." The customer smiled warmly. "And maybe one sandwich too." I nodded quickly while preparing the order. My hands shook badly, but when I returned with the food, the customer smiled again. "Your English is good," he said. Those simple words made me incredibly happy. That night, I practiced English for 3 hours after returning home. For the first time, learning English felt exciting instead of scary. Months passed. My confidence slowly grew. At school, I started speaking more during English lessons. Sometimes I still made mistakes, but I no longer felt ashamed. One afternoon, our teacher announced something important. "Next month," she said, "our school will host an English speech competition. The winner would receive a scholarship." Immediately, students began whispering excitedly. I had no intention of joining. Public speaking terrified me. But after class, my best friend Noah approached me. "You should join." I laughed nervously. "No way." "Why not?" "Because I'll embarrass myself." Noah crossed his arms. "You've improved a lot this year." "Not enough." Then he looked directly at me and said, "Lucas, sometimes the only difference between successful people and unsuccessful people is courage." I stayed silent. Part of me wanted to try. Another part wanted to hide forever. For several days, I kept thinking about the competition. Finally, one evening, my grandmother noticed. I looked distracted. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. I explained everything. After listening quietly, she smiled gently. "When I was young," she said, "I was afraid of many things too." "You were." "Of course, but you always seem brave." She laughed softly. "Brave people are not people without fear. Brave people are people who continue moving even when they are afraid." Her words touched my heart deeply. The next morning, I signed up for the competition. The preparation was extremely difficult. Every day after school, I practiced my speech repeatedly. Sometimes in my bedroom, sometimes while walking near the beach. Sometimes quietly in front of the mirror. At first, my speech sounded terrible. I spoke too quickly. My pronunciation was unclear. I forgot sentences constantly. There were moments when I wanted to quit, but every time I thought about giving up, I remembered my family. I remembered my father's tired face. I remembered my grandmother's advice. So I continued. Slowly, little by little, I improved. Competition day finally arrived. The school hall was crowded with students, parents, and teachers. Bright lights shined on the stage. My stomach felt sick with nervousness. What if I forget everything? I whispered. Noah patted my shoulder. "You'll be fine." When my name was called, my legs felt weak. I slowly walked onto the stage. Hundreds of eyes looked at me. For several seconds, I could not speak. Then suddenly, I saw my grandmother smiling proudly in the audience, and somehow, I felt calmer. I took a deep breath and began speaking. I talked about fear. Dreams. Failure. Hard work, and learning to believe in yourself. At first, my voice shook slightly, but gradually, I became more confident. The audience listened carefully. Some people nodded. Some smiled, and for the first time in my life, I truly felt heard. When I finished speaking, the room became silent for 1 second. Then loud applause filled the hall. My eyes almost filled with tears. Later that evening, the judges announced the results. The winner of this year's English speech competition is... My heart pounded loudly. Lucas Miller. For several seconds, I thought I heard wrong. Then Noah jumped excitedly beside me. You won. The audience clapped loudly. My grandmother wiped tears from her eyes. My father smiled proudly, and my mother looked happier than I had seen in months. At that moment, I realized something important. Sometimes, the things we fear most become the things that change our lives. Winning the competition changed many things. I received a scholarship for an English learning program in the city. It was the first time I would live away from home. Although I was excited, I also felt afraid. The city was huge compared to my small